Tayah, hello. I acknowledge the Noongar Boodja land we are on tonight in Bunbury, Western Australia, and acknowledge the Indigenous land you live on if you are live streaming tonight in other parts of Western Australia or Australia. We pay our respects to the traditional custodians, the Wardandi people here in the southwest, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community, and to all members of Indigenous communities, and to elders past, present and emerging. The Noongar word for happy is Jurapin. All our partners for this event are very happy to greet you in person and via live stream in this event, where the connection between us is made possible by technology for on-the-spot communication, live streaming of the whole event, one Zoom presenter, then YouTube viewings after the event and even during. My name is Leslie Jakes, and my role is the manager of the Southwest Women's Health and Information Centre, which is a partner of the Shire of Capel's Fact or Faction Read, Write, Connect Week of presentations during Science Week on factual topics and people's life stories. We are all featuring STEM with the addition of the A to make it STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. We're also pleased to partner with ECU as we did last year at this same venue. Tonight we ask you in the audience here in this room to assist us. Only move out of your seats at breaks between speakers, and when you do so, please keep your social distance. Please do not use this aisle here so that the camera crew can have a clear view of the speaker. Please do not talk while speakers are presenting. Please turn your mobile phones to silent. And very importantly, please text your questions to the number up on the screen and on your program. Tonight we can't take any questions from the floor due to time constraints. We will select a few questions to be read out after each speaker has finished. To our live stream participants, we of course cannot see you. However, you will see some breaks up on your screen when we take a few minutes between speakers. We're very pleased you are with us tonight as we seek your feedback on how this formula works for you. We now welcome Mahani Taylor of Mott's Kitchen, who has prepared a light meal here for the audience with her mother Janita. She will speak for 5 minutes on the power of food, culture and resilience. We welcome Mahani.
Hi everyone, my name is Mahani Taylor, but most people know me as Mott, a nickname given to my older sister when I was younger and it just stuck to me for quite a while now. I previously owned 5 years a little shop in the arcade in Bunbury called Mott's Cafe. And now with 2 little amazing boys, I have downscaled my time and service, and I am now just operating at home as Mott's Kitchen. So that's just a little info about myself. I hope everyone is enjoying the food this evening. Today, my beautiful mother and I have prepared some curry puffs, chicken sardies, rice paper rolls, vegetarian fried rice, and some Malay fish cakes. Just some background info about the food that we've prepared. Fish cakes was the first dish I introduced on a menu. I worked at a cafe when I was an apprentice, which I know it doesn't sound appetizing, but when people kind of think of fish cake, but it does kind of blend in really well after you eat it, and with the nice chili sauce as well. Fried rice was the first dish I ever cooked. Curry puffs took me years to master. All the press and folding, and I knew I made my mum proud after I accomplished that, and that wasn't long ago at all, so I'm very proud. Similar to sausages at a barbecue, we love to eat chicken sardies at Malay barbecues, a family favourite. Rice paper rolls, although not a traditional dish, it was just the dipping sauce that accompanied it that I created, and that's one of my uniqueness sauce. I've put this menu together to give everyone a chance to try some Malay favourites that you would find at a gathering and traditional special occasions. When I think about food and culture, it makes me realise how much of a wonderful connection it brings to our life. It means and values so much to my upbringing. I would always remember seeing my mum, my grandma, bringing a plate to share for any gathering. This has now adapted and passed on to many generations. It is such a lovely and kind gesture to be able to give, and it is also great to share new recipes and have variety of food to offer at a special occasion. As a host, it's greatly appreciated, and when guests bring a plate to share, it makes you just feel a bit more satisfied when you're able to help the host in some kind of way. I think the concept of giving and taking has been used in this scenario, and perhaps in life we should always find any opportunity to give to anyone, and we should only take when we need. How do I foster resilience eating cultural food? Nothing beats going back to your childhood places like mums, grandmas and aunties and eating at those traditional home-cooked meals, and that are simply so satisfying. It makes me feel more special knowing we have learnt eating foods that we grew up with wasn't the same as everyone else. I feel it's so important to know your cultural food and how we made it, of who we made it with, how much time we spent on it, and how much we value it, and how much we're going to reflect on it. I am so blessed that I've learned a lot of these skills in creating our cultural food. Not only have these memories that I have shared with, such as my mother, grandmother, mother-in-law and aunties, they all have their own techniques and styles and how they create food, and it's just so wonderful to know. I hope one day I can pass this skill on to my kids and carry it on, because if we don't take the time, it can be easily forgotten. I feel there is many skills out there when I look at the older generation, and it would be such a waste if we don't do something about it now. As a modern society change, we should always try to stick with our cultural food, because in this world, we need that diversity. Thank you so much for having me for tonight, and I hope everyone enjoyed the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahani. We're running very well on time. I'm about to introduce our next two speakers, who are going to speak in conversation, because that's what this really does promote. We're going to welcome to our stage here, firstly, Charmaine Councillor. She is a local member of the community of Bunbury and has strong ties to the Wardandi people and to other clans in the southwest. Her field of work and passion, she tells me, is language revival and maintaining language for future generations. She will describe that in conversation in much more detail. I've also had the pleasure of seeing some of the books that she has written in Noongar language. She's going to be in conversation with Felicity Deer. So when I asked Felicity how would she like to be introduced, my first desire was to say she's a drummer, and that is correct. She is also Felicity Deer AM, a great honour to have her this evening to be in conversation, and she is an educationalist who has worked a lot all over Western Australia and has lived in Bunbury at times and worked there. So I would encourage them to come forward, because they're going to take a moment to take a seat and then they will start. So just take a moment or two to invite them up to the stage, and then they will start their conversation. see you.
Thank you.
So, as you know, this fantastic head of steam that we're running this evening is on the power of language, culture and resilience. So we encourage both of you now to have a conversation about this absolutely wonderful, deep topic. Thank you.
Kaya yoga, maman mort kulunga, and kaya juk.
Kaya, what is joke?
Sister then. I first met Charmaine, I went through this in my head the other day, 2001, and you popped
Yes.
into Jitty Jitty Aboriginal School,
Mm-hmm.
and then you heard I was a drummer, and you said, I was principal at the school then, come and do a gig with you in Perth at Ab Music there. So I went down to Manning and did a practice, and we did this great gig at the old Clontarf. And then the next year you started working at Jitty Jitty,
Yes.
and you were mentored by the beautiful Nana Nora, Gloria Dan,
Yes.
and moved then from being an AIO into Noongar language teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And Charmaine I credit her to really giving me a deeper understanding and knowledge of Noongar culture, and it's really helped me with the education of students and things. So, yeah. So it's great to have some Wakanin with you, some Yanni.
Oh, it's Moorish to be here.
The theme tonight, of course, is power of language, culture and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So what does the power of culture mean to you?
The power of culture means to me is how we conduct ourselves using that power that is given to us through our culture, meaning the self-esteem, the awareness of ourself, and how we can bring forward or encourage others with empowerment to interact with culture, and to be able to stand strong, stand proud. And once we have a self-awareness of our own culture as Noongar people, and that's the language that I'm working with, is my own language, is
Yep.
Noongar. And once we start to learn about our culture and ourselves, then we can empower others to be able to engage in cultural activities, engage with other cultures,
Yep.
and to be able to stand proud and have that self-esteem and awareness of who we are, how we're connected to country, and how we conduct ourselves within our culture. So it's all about, for me, the empowerment of our people.
Yeah. So looking at the history of Noongar language, it was really the start of the 1905 Act, and then it was strengthened in 1936, that within many parts and towns of Noongar country, stretching from Esperance, Perth, Northam, around Upmore Riverway and things, language was banned within towns, and on the reserves it was still spoken, but when people came into town, and then of course the stolen generation at missions and within schools. I mean, there's lots of old photos of schools as the kids come in, no language and things. So how important is revival now?
Revival is very important because it actually, for example, like being an Aboriginal person, you look Aboriginal, you have the features of being Aboriginal, and people perceive that you should know everything about your language, about your culture. And unfortunately, many of our people grew up having this outward look of being Aboriginal and looking with those features, but sometimes walking around like a shell. You don't have something inside to be able to match what's showing on the outside. And so when revival of language is important, because it actually creates awareness of your own identity. It creates awareness of, again, like culture, your connection to country, and it's a sense of belonging to the land, particularly in the southwest. Whilst I was reviving Noongar language with my mentor, Nana Nora, or Auntie Nora, my auntie.
Yeah.
And she just was amazing because she just had such a beautiful presence there, as she taught both of us. And she engaged with us, and it was just the way she brought the language across in such a gentle and beautiful way that it wasn't putting me in a position to say that you should know that, you don't know that. And she said it was okay not to know a lot of language. It's okay not knowing. And that's the thing that our Noongar people still have that fear of, you know, oh, I feel embarrassed, you know, I don't know my culture, I don't know my language. And then when they see other people learning it and they feel like, oh, you know, it's something else I still can't grasp, I can't connect to. And so there's sort of like a missing link.
Yep.
And what I see language revival is that it's like a thread that connects us all with all the different parts of our society within the Aboriginal community. It connects us to land, it connects us to family, it connects us to the family kinships. It also connects us to our law and obligations to our family. And I find it's fantastic as a GPS flick, you know. When elders say, oh, you got to go to that landmark or something, and it's Noongar, you know, you think, what's that? But what it was back in the day, we didn't have things like dictionaries and, you know, we were told language by story and through song. And it, you know, it's been recorded and documented that many of our old people, they sang song to remember where to go on country. So you might see a landmark. They had a song about that landmark and what did that landmark mean. And then they had a dance maybe that would have, you know, associated with that landmark. And it's actually like your GPS within yourself. You're singing on country. And you might have heard the term songlines.
Yes.
You sing across country, so that song will take you along a journey. And if that song stops and you get to a part where it's unfamiliar to you, maybe you're not in your country anymore, you might have crossed the border.
Yep.
And so that was a lot of research that we've done as working, you know, as language specialists for many, many years. And I find it really fascinating.
Yeah.
So I say, oh, it's like a local GPS within myself. I still haven't really sort of, you know, gotten used to it, but it's just it's such a celebration of having a deep connection to country.
Yep.
And to seeing elders in particular reviving the language and bringing back old words and bringing back them old songs, and it's just like, oh, you step out again into your own little backyard or in your own environment and you look at country different again. You know, you might have walked past a waterhole or something that would have been there. But until someone tells you and you're aware of it, and you go, oh, wow, you know, it's like, oh, is that a Noongar word for that? Oh, is that what it meant? Oh, is there a story? And so, like, you just look at your whole world in a different light.
So I know with the banning of language, it's how Aboriginal English came about and a way of that identity and keeping part of culture and words and things, but is now being able to learn and take back traditional language is, you know, that's something like it's a joy or in you know, in Noongar culture.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I feel so proud, and a little part of you know, regret somewhere when my nana used to tell me to go shop and buy something in Noongar. You know, I'll learn it later on, but I wish I would have listened back then.
Yeah.
But just to hear our Noongar people having excitement, you know, talking to each other. We say Kaya now on the street. Now we're doing messages on the phone like, Kaya, ring me back, Bora. That means later. And so we're using it like that now, Flick, you know. It's really deadly, really good.
How is it when you've been doing your lessons and that with adults, and particularly adults or people who've come from stolen generation or elders who had it drilled into them, you know, shame language and things?
Yeah.
How's that?
That's a very long journey.
Yep.
Some people adapt to it just straight away, and some people have that fear. It's a built-in fear, it's a learned fear, and there's trauma attached to it.
Yeah.
And so when you're punished for speaking your language and you're separated from your mum and dad and you're forbidden to have that transference of knowledge and culture, there's a shame factor. And, you know, I still hear some of my Noongar people, and particularly the elders that experienced the stolen era, that they have, oh, don't say that Noongar word, you know, we might get punished, or have their fear like, oh, I was punished when I said that word, and don't talk that, you know, gibberish and stuff like that. So I work with a lot of community in the last few years, and we developed programs in our community, and how do we actually interact and involve them again, bring them back in to say it's safe now, it's okay. And one of the part of the activities we do with the program is actually a program that was developed in America, and it was for Native Americans who had seen a great loss of language, and their language had become dormant for some time. And sadly, there were many, like one speaker that maintained that language, but if that speaker didn't have someone to talk to, that language became dormant, it became sleep. And we don't like to say the word extinct, because we still feel that the language gone to sleep on country, and all we have to do is just wake it up, but we've got to use the right word to wake it up. You know, it won't understand English, it won't understand any other language, it understands our language, a country where we live. And we have a thing that we were adopted, or we were teaching. It was this healing process of grief. Talk about your grief, talk about your loss of your culture and your language. And put it out there on the table and say, well, I understand auntie, uncle, I understand nan and pop, you know, what you've been through. Tell us your story, tell us your yarn, and validate it, and validate the loss, because it is a grief and it's generational trauma. And once we go through that process, it's like a burden has been lifted, and they say it's okay. It's like to ask for permission to speak again. And I didn't really consider that when I started working with language until I was experiencing it for the first time. And now it's an important factor that we do when we do language revival. And one thing, what one elder told me, is to tread lightly on country. You tread lightly, you don't disturb country, but also tread lightly with us, because we've been through a lot of grief. Tread lightly when you speak to us, and gently pull someone in, you know. And then what fascinated me was, there was a little term that I talked to some of my community, and I've learnt from others what I worked with. There's some part in our brain that we have language when we learnt from a very young age. And many of our elders would have learnt language till, could have been the age of 10. And they say that, you know, with neurolinguistics, when you're learning a language, you learn your full vocabulary to the age of 7. So that's a very important time when you learn language, is early childhood. And so I know that the elders are out there, and they hold this memory here. There's a special little box in there that's saying, you know, get the right key to open this little lock. And I did tell a yarn now, story.
Cool. What did you?
I did this workshop, and I had one of these aunties, and she said, oh, I don't know any language. Oh, I don't want to know. And she was very, you know, stern like this. And then I said, auntie, you know, one day there's going to be the little right key or the right word that's going to unlock that memory. And she said, not happening. And anyway, I worked with her for 5 weeks with all the other elders, about 20 of them. Anyway, she's sitting back there like this. And then by week 3, the hand started going like this. Week 4, started getting a bit softer. And she came up, she looked all around. She reckoned, you know that little box? I said, yeah, it's open. And I went, no way, yes. And I said, well, what was the word that opened it? The Noongar word for smoke. And I said, not this smoke. She said, no, smoke on the fire. And I said, oh, really? Because we have a word for smoke called boy. And she said, I remember as a little girl, my dad used to build certain fires. And depending on what happened in the occasion of what's happening in the community, so she remembered a sad time, a sorry time, when they would light the fire and they, on purpose, make black smoke. And the black smoke would refer to sadness or sorrow. And then because, you know, we didn't have mobile phones back then and can't text, you know, so how are you going to send a message up in the sky? So they had their own iCloud, Felicity.
That was good.
Yeah, I thought that was good, eh? Remember that
steal
one?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it just went up, and everybody else can see, oh, it must be sorry time for them fellas over there, in that camp or something like that,
Yeah.
and then after that, oh, Auntie was talking, and she said, that box, I can't go home and have a sleep now because all night these Noongar words coming in my head.
Oh,
And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Auntie, but I'm not really. But then, and then what she did was she brought back an old custom that she forgot about when she was a little girl. And because she was the oldest one in the room, and no one else knew what that practice was, and her son was like, Mum, you never told me that. She said, no one asked. And I said, what it was, Auntie, was that thing that opened up, that touched that part of her. And it's like a smell.
Yep.
When you get your mum's cooking or, I know when my mum makes cakes, I could smell it through the house, and it takes you back.
Yeah.
And that's what language can do too. There's a part of in us that we have a favourite word. When you grew up, you might have had a funny nickname, and the speaker previously was saying they call her a nickname.
Yeah.
And when you say those names, there's a smile, and we have like a remembrance, and we go back in time, and you can see the faraway look in people's eyes when they relate to something of happiness, a time, but most importantly, they start to remember. And that was a joy for me, and I still have that privilege, and I'm really thankful that I can do that with my elders. And it's just an amazing thing to see. You just can't describe it really. You have to be there.
Yeah, good. We got more time. Great.
Oh, put it out.
So with the revival of language and that too, what do you think about non-Aboriginal people, Wajula people learning Noongar language?
Oh, look, I think it's for everyone. If you live on someone's country,
Yep.
For instance, if you go overseas, right, or go somewhere and you want to communicate, what do you got to do?
You pick some key words and places. And
And you've got to
things
learn, to talk their language,
Yeah.
Well, same here. If you live on country, you've got to learn the language of the land. And I firmly believe that after years of experience, teaching and working with people with workshops, and I've worked with people with different cultures, and it's fascinating actually. And you just, you all have a bond together on country. So, for instance, you come to Bunbury, you get to say words like Wadandi country, and you could go to your friends, I've just been down to Wadandi country. Go, what's that, Flick? You said, oh, well, that's a Noongar word for that area down there. So you're educating someone as well, but it's like a deeper connection. And I had a workshop one time, I had up to 10 people, and one lady came up to me later, she goes, she lived in this area down Margaret River.
Yep.
And she says, oh, I didn't realise how much Noongar was in the land, She went in her backyard and she looked, she goes, oh, I know the Noongar word for tree. She had a tree in her backyard. So she could say, born. And then she realised the little willy wagtail was a jitty jitty. So she started saying kaya, jitty jitty, started talking to the animals and to their Noongar names. And a lot of our birds have names in reference to the sound they make. And so that was something that she learnt, and she said, I just looked at my backyard a bit different, and it was a deeper level and a connection. And I just think that wherever we travel, if we show respect of someone else's culture, take the time out to learn the language of the land, because I think that shows our respect to the custodians of country, no matter where we go. And I think that they see that as in terms of respect, respect in their culture. And what I find is that we all belong to Wadandi country. We can embrace it. And what that does is actually keep our language alive. So if you mob out there start talking Noongar, that's good. Very good. Because we want our language to blossom. We want it to grow and grow, and, I might see you down the street, Flick.
Yeah.
Tayah, what did you look like? We're talking now,
Like a dome today,
Yeah. So, we just want to celebrate language. It doesn't have to be something from the past.
Yeah.
We can talk language today. Our language was, ancient. 60,000 odd years old. And I tell our kids today, do you know you're learning a very, very ancient language? They go, whoa. And I said, over 60 plus thousand years old. And I'm going to teach you how to say that word. And it just blows their mind. Because just imagine thinking about that, you know? So that's what I really encourage people to share, text, phone, you know, get out there and just bring it alive. Because it's going to come alive and we're all going to be part of it. We live in this country, let's learn the language of the land. And I think that just bonds us together. And just like me and you know, we are.
Wakaning, yep.
Yeah, wakaning.
Oh, good. So, resilience. So, gaining language back and taking control of it and sharing it. How does it help Noongar people's resilience, their strength?
It's just amazing what it can do. Language learning, and of course, a lot of us have to learn as second language learners. And a lot of my education was in English. It's just the strength of power and connection to country, and makes you feel strong. And then you can, if you learn about your identity and yourself and your language, it just gives you that really determination of power, empowerment. I know who I am, no shame in that. I know I can speak language on country. And I don't know, it's for me personally, it's just given me opportunity just like this, you know. And actually, you know, sometimes we have family that go through really hard times, just seeing the joy of them, you know, even though they're going through a hard time and things have happened in their life, I've seen a lot of healing with our people when they start learning their language.
Yep.
And I've got cousins and friends and I go, when we start in language class, you know? So they just can't wait to get back in and just learn more. And what's happening now is, what I find fascinating is our generation of doing the hard work, bringing the language back. And what thing that we want to see is that our children will never have the feeling of language loss again. They take it for granted now because they got it. But we don't want them to feel like losing something. They're gaining something. But our generation had to fight for that. And just imagine our elderly that were forbidden to speak it, like you said earlier. They fought and they kept that flame alive. And all we did was just fan it a little bit, embellished it a little bit, and brought it to modern society. And then we want kids to look on the street, see a Noongar name. We want, you know, family to see books written in Noongar language and publications, and go to school and pick up a Noongar book.
And I noticed coming into Bunbury and things, they've written some of the local names
Yes.
and welcome in Noongar and that. And I know Fremantle and other places are, you know, putting dual names, which is something when we were looking at language and culture travelling New Zealand, we saw strong.
Oh, yes.
And so I know for both of us that's been really good to see happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, I personally hope within schools in WA, the local language, and in Noongar country, Noongar spreads and through more city schools. It is getting bigger, but keep spreading, because I still keep meeting Noongar kids who don't know language and identify like that. And language is something there. And for me, as well, it's helped me really connect stronger to country. And by learning Noongar from you and other Noongar friends and people I've had the honour of working with, and also connect to family.
Yes.
Being able to come in and sometimes been the only one or whatever, but like
you
understand
my
and join
jook,
in
you're
yarn.
my sister. Yeah, we adopted Felicity years ago, so can't get away from us now.
Even though I'm a drummer, just a drummer.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I just want to encourage now. There is language programs in our schools, but what I'm working currently now is trying to do workshops in our community, working with parents, working with young mums, you know, that are expecting
What's
babies.
your new business called?
Wadandi Maya Kadijin. It means House of Learning, and that we're new kids on the block in Bunbury. So we reinvented ourselves, and we're a local service provider. So we want to start looking at how do we teach others to teach language. So once I teach you a word, your responsibility to teach someone else that word, and that person teach someone else that word. So there's no onus on one person. But then that's your responsibility. If I share something to you, you're obliged by culture to share it to someone else. And I just wanted to look at, we've done some lullabies with Noongar language in the last 2 years, and my mum is one of the singer-songwriters on these lullabies. And so I'm working with Can. So if you want to learn how to sing a lullaby in Noongar, and these are contemporary songs that we've made together, and they're all, most of it in Noongar language, so you can get one flick.
Oh,
and
good.
then the audios are online, they're for free, so go to the Can website, download the audios for free and the booklet. And a lot of schools are using these, and a lot of parents are expecting, and you know, they want to have a nice lullaby in language, you know, to sing to the little one as a legacy to pass on.
Yep.
To the next one. So, and I was so privileged, like when Mum contributed to one of the songs, talking about revival of language for elders, she remembered a song Nan sang to her. And then what made me proud was she put language to that song then and made it even, you know, more connected, you know, to country and land. And so that was just, that blew my mind. I said, Mum, I didn't know you had that song. But you just never know, Flick. You know?
No.
So
And I think that's what the reteaching and revival of the language will do
Yes.
for adults
yeah.
there and for kids, and keep it alive
Mm.
on that. Yeah. Oh, well, have we got any questions or anything? We do.
Oh.
Good.
I hope we can answer them.
I just put my cup down.
We've had some questions through our text line. This one you've touched on, but we would really like to hear more of your viewpoint. How do you feel that dual naming of places in the southwest and further afield could help with reconciliation and appreciation of Noongar culture?
I think it's a wonderful thing that people can learn about country and learn about the language, and I think it's important so that it sort of gives a sense of what was here and always here, before townships were developed, and you know how land has changed, but it still gives that historical connection of what was here, and I think to learn the dual names is fantastic. So it just extends people's language and connection to country. I hope I've answered that correctly.
And also, you know, there has been some naming of Noongar place names, like Flick said before, but we were just interested in how you believe that really fosters reconciliation.
Oh, I think that people are willing to acknowledge our language and to put it on a signpost. How special is that? You know, and it just teaches our kids too that, oh, this is a Noongar name, and it has a meaning to it. And 9 times out of 10, those signages or those place names, they have actually special meaning. It could represent a story. It could represent a story of maybe an animal that might live in that area. It might represent a landmark. And so there's more behind just a word. It connects you to country, connects you to a storyline, a song. And unfortunately, a lot of our stories have not been revived, and we're still looking at doing that. But I think it's giving people a chance to feel connected. So people that are not Noongar or non-Aboriginal, they can say, well, I'm having a go, you know, and I can start to learn those words. And I think once we do that, I think that's just giving back respect to our community, that there is a language here, there are a people, there are Noongar people, and they still live here, you know. They haven't gone anywhere, they're still residing, but in a different way. So I think it's just, and everyone always asks me about the South Forest Highway, Manjigorda. So that's a great conversation starter, I'll tell you now. So yeah, it's really good. So it just, you know, people go, oh, what's that word? And I go, yeah, I know, it's a big long word. Took me by surprise when I first saw it come up. So I had to go and learn it too. But it's just, I don't know, it just brings us all together, and I think everyone's starting to embrace it. And there's change. People are changing their views of language, and we're all getting more multicultural now, and we're learning things. And I think, what's one more language to learn? You know, and it's an ancient one. So you guys are very, very special, because you actually live in a land that's very old, and you actually get to speak words, very old, ancient words. How special is that? And nowhere else in the world you will hear this language. How unique is that?
But it also, even just knowing some plant and animal names and things as a start, connects you, like when you look at the marri tree and you see the red sap and know, you know, it's marrying blood and that, you go, oh, the marri, that's why, because of that. Yeah. And when you hear, you know, the crow in the morning, you know, with wadong and things.
Wadong, yeah.
You go, oh, yeah. And it, you know, brings it to, that's also the Western Australian crow, or the, you know, it's, yeah.
And so, particularly like if research has shown, and other communities that have shared similar situations as us with language revival, sometimes if you don't speak that Noongar word of a particular plant, there's no other way to describe this plant. So it actually comes with a definition. And I remember looking at another community, and they said if they don't speak that word, they will not know where that plant is and know what it is, because there's no English translation for this plant. There's no other language can describe what that is. So that's where we're now relearning, and like you said with the crow, if we don't say Waradong, you know, we won't know what we're talking about. And that brings me to a story. When I was a kid, I was going to school, in primary school, and someone pointed to this goanna, picture of a goanna, and they said, what's that? And I said, Karada. And I said, no. I said, yes, it is the Karada, because all I knew was that thing was the Karada. Later on, I've worked out it was a goanna in English, but for me, I grew up saying that word, Karada, and no one could actually convince me otherwise. Lucky I did. Yeah. I was speaking my Noongar way back then, didn't realise. But you know, so that's how it is sometimes. You just can't describe anything else unless you have that particular word. Like we have cappuccino. Where's that come from? We adopted that, haven't we? We all know what cappuccino is, but it's not native to our language in English, is it? No, we borrowed it. So we can take on other words. So now you can get used to saying Manjugorda up on that big road there. You get to say Wadandi, so that's it. There's no other way to describe it. When
I go to Perth, yeah?
Yeah, no other way to describe it. So
I remember
just come to that word.
A funny yarn about words like that. I won't say the boy's name, but a long time, one of the GD kids is an adult, and he saw the kulbari, the magpie, and we were talking about the kulbari, and I thought, oh, just see if he knows the English word. And I said, do you know the other word for kulbari? Yeah. I said, what is it? He said, Collingwood bird. If he's watching, one of your relatives, he will know who he is. I won't say.
I love it. I love it.
We've got one more question before the end of your session. Someone has asked, do I say I respect your Noongar culture, or do I say I respect your Aboriginal culture?
Oh, go for all the way, say Noongar. Because Aboriginal is very generic, and you can say that right across country, but if you get to know the language and the people, say Noongar, because that's actually make it more precise to, when you say Noongar, some other Aboriginal person will go, oh, that's that mob down southwest of Western Australia.
Yeah. So
they actually, it's like your passport. They identify what country you're talking about if you say Noongar. In comparison to, so if I say Yamanji, where my husband's from, and that's the Midwest. So if I say Yamanji, you go, oh, that mob that way. So yeah, when I say Noongar, oh, you've mobbed down that way. So yeah, look, I give you permission, say Noongar. But yeah, and I suppose just to know where the borders stop. Like, just south of Wodonga towards, that's Noongar country, and down towards Esperance and further over. And you watch, you'll start to read the country when you start to learn language. Our trees are all tall down here, yeah? When you get further east, what happens?
It's shorter.
Shorter, and the country changes, and you get lots of white gum, and they get smaller and smaller. So then the language starts to change as well. And so then you see it's a different country. The ground is a different colour, and some plants and animals are a little bit different. And so that's when you start to determine, I'm in somewhere else, And you can read the country when you start to learn language. And then when my husband goes that way, he says, we say for the grey kangaroo, yonga down this way. And when he goes that way, he say biggerda. And when he starts saying those words, I go, I'm in Yamiji country now. But it's amazing. It just fits. Everything has its purpose. And particularly when we talk about Noongar seasons, we have 6 seasons in Noongar language. But you look at
Jilba now.
yeah, and the intervals, of, we're just going into Jilba now. We just come out of Mukaroo, but you can actually see it every 2-month intervals that our seasons change, and that's how it was all the time. So fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you to both of you.
Well, I'm going to do my duty before I go to teach one Noongar word, one of my favourite. They don't have a word for goodbye, but Buddha means see you again, see you later. So
yes.
Buddha.
Buddha. Thank you.
Oh, got my microphone all hooked up. Oh, and now my tea spilled. I'll just hide my tea. Oh.
Don't worry.
Shame. Thank you.
We now have a 5-minute break, so we'll see our live streamers in 5 minutes, and then we will invite our next speaker forward. Hello, live streamers. We're back again. We just took a short break. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Amanda Bell to you. Amanda is going to talk about artistic self-expression, language and resilience, following the theme that's going through all of the presentations this evening of resilience. It gives me great pleasure to invite you to come over, Amanda, and say good evening, or are you going to stay over there?
I'm staying here for a minute.
She's staying out of view just for a moment.
Oh, forever. Oh dear. Oh, it's not working. Oh, yeah. Goodness. Can you hear it? Stop now. Sorry. Hi everyone, my name's Amanda. I'm glad to be here sharing my stories. I just want to talk a little bit about my art journey, which sort of started not that long ago. And the reason I think that it started, well, I know that it started, was when I was caring for my mum, who passed away in February. So because I couldn't go very far geographically, I was able to go somewhere in my mind, I was able to go somewhere with my imagination, and I was able to sit with her for hours creating and making. I think also one of the reasons it happened is because I was looking for a different way of expressing myself, of finding a different language to tell a story, because I'd found that English and the way that I've been communicating, particularly for many years in the public service, wasn't enabling me to express myself. And I ended up feeling a little bit like how Charmaine was talking about. I looked okay on the on the outside, but on the inside I felt a little hollow and a little empty, and I couldn't find a language to express myself. So I obviously grew up with English. My mum was Welsh and English. My dad, who wasn't sure what his background was, but it was, I think, Irish, English, and then he discovered an Aboriginal relations after the fact. But so I had that kind of culture and was interested in, and there was particular Welsh words that we might learn. But I didn't know any language from Aboriginal Australia, or where I'm from. I'm a Yamaji, so I'm not from Wadandi country, but I grew up in Wadandi country. And I think it's a little bit like how Charmaine was saying, all those things resonated with me, what you were saying. The hollowness and the feeling that I wasn't really Aboriginal. I couldn't speak the language. Am I Aboriginal? How can I talk about culture? When people kind of look to me or tease me about being Aboriginal, I was a little bit confused because I don't feel Aboriginal. I might look it, but I don't feel it. And I didn't have the language to even express that either. So in my journey to find a language to express myself, it seemed to come along with art, which was without words as I saw it then. So when I was asked to do something to represent the themes of tonight, strangely enough, I went back to a word, and I'll sort of tell you why, get to why I did that. In my childhood, I wanted to learn lots of different languages, and then I went to uni. I tried to learn Russian, which probably tells you a little bit about my political leanings, but that was a very difficult language to learn, and I've got some really good friends who are Malaysian Chinese. So I tried to learn a bit of Malay, which is all beautiful languages, Russian, Malay, tried to learn Mandarin, all very difficult to learn, but it just kind of didn't sit with me right. So what happened was I joined a singing group, and this has been a revelation because we're singing in Noongar. Shout out to the singing group, whose voices you can hear in that little bit of audio, some of those voices. So we're singing in Noongar, and something felt right within me, singing those songs in Noongar, standing on Wurundjeri country, singing in Noongar. Yep. So getting to why I decided to make Muditch in a big shiny Muditch, people kept asking me, oh, so what are you going to do? I'm making a big shiny Muditch. Which confused a lot of people, but it was good because then you can start talking about it. And in the singing group, Wardan Warrankin, which means ocean singing, I taped it so that I could do the audio, and we just kept saying the word. Once people discovered the word, there was such a joy in saying that word. So that's one of the reasons why I chose that word. It was my entry into Noongar. It's a joyful word. I love it because of what it means, which is great or fantastic. I love this word because how it sounds. I love my body when I'm saying it. I love how it feels to say it. It feels very joyful. I love the sound of it. I love hearing people say it. So this word, along with many other words, is the reason I chose Muditch in particular as one of my favourite words. I love this word because it comes from this Budja, this country, from Wurundjeri country. It is ancient, and that also resonated with me, but it's new at the same time. Every time we say it, it's new, but it goes way back. It carries with it grief and sorrow and love from way back, but today as well. It carries stories of grief, and there are many stories of grief with Aboriginal Australia, as well as those stories of love, of sorrow, of joy. I love it because this word, like many others, give us strength, build resilience. That's not a good word not to know how to say it tonight. I love it because this word, like many, gives us strength, builds resilience, and we do those things together. We say those words together, we speak those words, we hear those words. Even if we don't know those words, we hear them, and we're swallowing them and consuming them and putting them inside us. Muditch. I also love this word because it speaks about survival. If we didn't have culture and a way to express that culture via language, and we're talking about Noongar now, but through art or music, if we didn't have words or a language to talk about our culture and express it, we would simply not survive. So I love this word, this Muditch word, because it talks about survival. We'd die out if we didn't have culture. We'd die out if we didn't have a language to describe culture. We need a way to express this. We also need a way, this talks about going way back. It's handed down from generation to generation. This word is handed down from generation to generation. And it carries with it those stories. It carries us. It connects us way, way back. And that's why I love this Muditch word. I love this word because we have been beaten, imprisoned. We had our heads shaven, our mouths washed out. We were raped and murdered for saying this word and words like it. So I want to celebrate that word because we survived it. Muditch survived, this word survived. This thing that goes way back survived. So that's why I love that word and words like it. And that word and words like it become sentences and become paragraphs and become languages. And that hollowness that we might find in ourselves, we find ourselves expressing that because of this word, Wooditch. I did have... Oh, I just want to let you listen to this one more time. While I go over here. Oh. I just wanted to play that again. The Wardan Warrington singers recorded and you can hear them. And also the Noongar Art Program participants that come through Bragg that I'm part of also were recorded in that. Among them is an elder who had a stroke and she was a little ashamed and maybe, I can't quite say the words properly. She's the only one that says Murichurga. So she was a little bit worried about saying it, but when she said it, and the guy who helped me mix the audio loved that one in particular. He loved her saying Muditch Yoga, so I can't wait on Tuesday night to play that to her. I just did want to talk a little bit about the Noongar Art Program as a way of also an entry into feeling culture and finding a way of expressing myself and placing myself and giving myself a sense of belonging in this country and as an Aboriginal person. There's still a sense sometimes that maybe you're not Aboriginal enough or that you're lacking in some way, and certainly learning Noongar and singing in Noongar and painting and sharing with Noongar people, even though I'm from Yamaji country, is a wonderful part of trying to connect with people. And it's also feeds into the way of that I've been being able to express myself without words. I trained as a social worker, and so I have been working with the Department of Education and Child Protection and also in education. And I found, and oftentimes employed as an Aboriginal liaison person, or Aboriginal liaison officer. And so you're charged with consulting and bringing community, being a bit of a bridge from community into department. And what I found is that there's often some little bit of pushback when you say what I feel are there to do. That's your job as an Aboriginal liaison person. And I wondered why that was. One of the incidents that I did have is they asked me to do, in the health department, asked me to do a little newsletter. So just to introduce myself, I was new in the job. And what I wanted to do was use Aboriginal language throughout the text. I didn't want to explain what it was. I didn't want to put the English first or last or in brackets or even at the bottom. I just wanted people to read it as if that's the way it was meant to be read. And I ended up having a very, very large argument with the very nice lady that I sat next to, because seriously, we argued about putting these things in the English in brackets. And after I calmed myself a little, I was just sitting there wondering why that was. Why was it such a difficulty to do it that way? I don't know whether people get it, why I wanted to do it that way. I kind of didn't really know either, but I just didn't want Noongar there and explained by English. as if you'll only get it if I give it to you the way that you expect it. So I sat there thinking about why I did it, and eventually why I wanted it done that way. And eventually she said, okay, probably to just kind of shut me up. So I was quite happy, because that's the way I thought people would read it and they would understand it and consume it that way. And then when it came out, I found she did the way she wanted to do it, not my way. And so rather than it be something that I got angry about or fumed about, I did actually go home and get angry about it. But in terms of a working relationship, you have to understand what that resistance might be, and why people might be resistant to that. And I guess we could talk about that for a long, long time. We could talk about racism, we could talk about the history of this country or the history of colonisation and so on. But sitting in that office, I had to find a way to reconcile that. And sometimes that's, in the words of a woman who I met, who was a Danish woman, part Jamaican, part Danish. She came over to do a bit of work down in Bustleton. She said to me when I was whinging about these things and other things, she said, Amanda, no one's going to give you a space. You've got to find your own space. And so sitting there with the English words in brackets, I thought, you're right, you have to find your own space. That's theirs, that's her space. And I need to find my own space instead of decrying that or whinging about that. So partly in my art, the use of this word, the use of that audio is all about trying to find your space. And it's not like, hey, give me some of yours, or get out of my way. It's just I'm finding my own space in your head, in your heart, in the land. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's a work in progress, obviously. I'm still going to rant and rave and go home or talk to myself in the car going home. But yeah, that's the journey, to find that space and then be able to express it by a language. I did just want to talk a little bit about the painting that I did for Noongar Country, which is still on until Sunday, if anybody hasn't seen it. It's a beautiful exhibition over at Bragg. The painting is, it's called Adref, which is the Welsh for homecoming. And I did pause a little bit thinking, oh, maybe I shouldn't have a Welsh word in a Noongar Country exhibition, but that's my mum's word. And I so connected to what you were saying, Charmaine, when you connect something inside, so the Welsh made sense to me. It made sense to name that painting that. It made sense for me to look at that word, and it made sense for me to say it, and it made sense for me to paint it. So I'm actually learning Welsh on an app, and that also makes sense to me, my mother's country. So I think that's really all I'd like to say, and I just want to say one more word, and I hope you'll say it with me. I don't know that you probably need any clues to what the word might be. And can we say it on count of three? 1, 2, 3. Mudich! That's Mudich. A question? But I was going to...
I'll just come close to you.
Yep.
We have a question for you, Amanda. And now I just have to try and read it. How do you turn a thought into a piece of art?
That is about the 557th idea that I had in 6 weeks. Look, that is such a good question, because that's it. That's how do you make it? We've all probably got 100,000 ideas. We could, but how to make it happen, how to materialise it. That one wasn't too bad, but this one is obviously a little bit simple, because I just wanted to honour that word, and by honouring that word, honour the language and honour culture, and talk a little bit about my journey. But some of the other ones, and I also wanted some audio. I'm really interested in being collaborative. I found the art community really, really collaborative. So getting other people's voices is really important to me, and showcasing other people's voices. There's a 74-year-old non-Aboriginal woman on there. There's the Aboriginal participants. There's a little girl. There's a whole lot of people. So I always try and collaborate and get other people people's ideas, but ultimately you've got to have your kind of vision and then make that happen. And it can be a little bit lonely. People might think it's a little selfish, but this is the way that I've chosen to express, and it makes sense to me at the moment. But yeah, it's lots and lots of ideas. You've got to cut them out a little, and sometimes just a matter of like in the one that was in my piece that was in Art 2020 was just about sticking little mosaics onto cardboard. Another piece that I did was about hundreds and hundreds of tea bags, unravelling tea bags and dyeing tea bags, sewing them onto tulle, which was extremely frustrating, but what else are you going to do? Just do it. Just stitch, just unravel, just stick, just tape, and to get that idea made real. And it will change 100 times, but that's life, isn't it? That's kind of my answer.
Thank you, Amanda. Well, live streamers, we're not pausing for a break. We're very pleased to move on in our program, and our next speaker is zoomed in. I've had the great pleasure of meeting Assel Tayah when she lived in Bunbury, and she contributed to widening and broadening the perspective of women who came to the Women's Health Centre to hear what she said about peace and also about women. Assel is going to be questioned by Marion Kay, who is here this evening, also a friend of hers, and that will be at the end of Assel's session. And I'm just looking for the cue that we're going to welcome and say good evening to Assel Tayah.
Hello, can you hear me well?
I can hear you, Assel. Great to see you. And
Thank you, good to hear you. And can I see the audience? Is there any way to say hello? Hello.
they're waving and they're saying hello. Great pleasure to see you on the screen there, Assel, and I'm now handing over to you to talk about your project and once again the power of culture and resilience and language.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if if I'm able to share my screen, because I'm trying from this side of the country and it's not working. I need to have permission from the admin or the host of the Zoom. Let's see, still can't. Before I start, I would like to begin to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Cowen Nation, the owners of the land where I stand. I still can't. You can, if you make me the host, I would be able to do that, and I would make you back the host. That would make it much easier. Great, now I can. Sorry for that. I was just seeing the screen coming up. And here I just go to my book chair. Sorry, it's a bit confusing. Can you see the screen? Can you see my screen? Yes? Like maybe I will ask you to move. Is that all good?
Yes, Assel, that's good. We could see your screen.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Leslie. It's just, yeah, it's all good. Great. So as I said, I wanted to acknowledge the custodian owners of the land where I stand, the culmination, and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. And I'm so excited to be here tonight to share with you part of my journey. And I am wearing the scarf I got as a gift from the center. And I don't know if you remember it, Leslie, but I love this scarf so much. And I don't wear it often because I keep it aside. So it's really a beautiful memory for me, being in the center and being loved so much from you and the team. And thank you very much for hosting me today. It really means a lot to me to be able to kind of share what happened to me since I left Bunbury 5 years ago, and where I have kind of sailed within my journey, coming to Australia and trying to adapt as an Arab speaker and other languages before I even I could even speak English. And one of the things that happened to me in Australia is like looking and enjoying the beauty of differences and beauty of different faces, different languages, different cultures, trying the food and enjoying the beauty of the festivals that I have seen in Bunbury, but also much more in Melbourne. And that kind of made me wonder, looking at these people and remembering my own story as a Palestinian living in Australia, and watching different waves of people coming to Australia and learning about them and learning the differences of the reasons that brought people here, and knowing that there's lots of differences but also similarities in bringing and people choosing or being forced to leave their homes. And that kind of started with me growing up as a child and always wondering what people, my people at least, when they were forced to leave their homes, have taken with them when they had to leave. And that's really a story that I watched as a child, seeing photos like this sack of belongings of people holding it with them and walking miles and miles while they're looking back and they cannot see anything left from their homes. And because of that, and most of the people that come here to Australia, that come as refugees and asylum seekers, they really cannot, they have nowhere and nothing to go back to. And that made me kind of think about an idea, a project as an artist and an activist and a mom, to kind of bring people together to hear about themselves and celebrate the differences and disputes that they have. And one of the things that I have started with is going to a festival, one of the festivals around, and asking people, what would you do if you have to leave your home? What do you carry with you in your sacks? And people started talking about lots of things, very kind of luxurious things, living in Australia and having really never been forced to leave their homes. And that made me even think more about, would they know or like be interested to know more about the cultures and the people and the reasons why people come to Australia away from their homes, and do they really actually choose? And that was one of the reasons why I started Bookja, which is the sack of belongings, that the project I am leading now in Melbourne. And I would say not only, but basically, and made me think about a lot about what's the best way to do it. So one of the first performances that we have done is working at the Immigration Museum in like 2017. That was the very, very first time we had our show. We literally installed a tent in the backyard of the Immigration Museum and invited artists from different backgrounds that have been displaced from their own homes to come and share a story. We didn't really work a lot on that, but on the performances themselves. But what really was important is going to schools and sharing my own experience and telling the story behind people leaving their homes, what they have been through, what do you think these people have been through, and what do you have in your mind to ask them? Instead of going to the communities around us and say, tell us how bad, how hard your story was and your journey was. Instead, we ask the children to just be as curious as they can be. And you can imagine children ask the very simple question like, how did the bread taste in your country? did it snow in your land? Like very simple, beautiful stories that really share the love and the curiosity and innocence of the children. Instead of like hearing any racist comment, instead the children were so loving and supportive and really wanted that very basic um, special stories that whoever had to leave their homes carry with them, as all of us. And those questions were when sent to these communities that we work in the refugee and asylum seeker communities, and the answers came all together in bundle of love to the artist to create an art piece to represent within those answers and questions. And since then, like each of them, Sasha speak Mandarin and Pepe speaks Spanish, and I speak Arabic and maybe 7 or 8 different dialects of Arabic. And other people speak First Nation. There's Pepe, which is actually from the Surrey, which is actually from the Kimberley. And we were all together and displaced within Australia as a First Nation artist. All of them came together and sang and danced and shared their own work within their own practice and their own language. And believe it or not, in that same space, there were people that stayed for the 3 different shows, same shows, 3 different times during the day because they were so thirsty, they're so excited, they're so passionate to hear more of something that is related to theirs, something related to their language, something they haven't really seen much in Melbourne because everything is in English. Most things are in English, and people don't really have the chance to enjoy the richness of their um, own culture, especially the Arabic Muslim community. They don't really find appropriate things to go and watch when most of the things are not really appropriate in their feeling about art or about culture in general. And since then, we have been invited to so many different places that is kind of celebrating again the joy and culture of our own. Like this is one of the shows I cannot forget ever, of ours, going all the way to Shepparton. It's not really far, not as Bunbury, but it's still 2 hours and a half from here. And it was one of the rich audiences that came together that the council said to us, we have never seen this diverse group coming to one tent. We didn't see these faces before, but it shows how much people want to know and want to hear what we have to say. In here, I sing in Arabic, and the music are in English, kind of Western a bit music, but and Pepe dance his traditional dance, his Chilean dance, and people were like amazed because that's something they don't really feel every time they go to a theater because it's like a specific monocultured way of sharing it. But in here, we were like so intercultural, so supportive. And one of the girls there, maybe you can see in the photo, said, like, my dad told me his story 20 years ago, but today I have lived it. And that just show that there's some power of language that cannot really be explained by a word or a translation, something that just kind of go through the channels of your heart and your body and just like immerse you in so many ways and enrich your way of understanding the other without even asking the question, which doesn't happen often in a lot of cases. But in this place, people just didn't want to leave. Like we were supposed to go somewhere and like and pack the tent, which take a long time, and instead we found ourselves for 3 hours after the show finished just talking to people and like um, having those conversations between the artists and the audience and between the audiences themselves, and then the audience sharing some of their own songs and their own culture. And that just like was so heartwarming, just being there and absorbing the whole um, environment. And the tent is normally, that's the third tent we created. The tent is normally made by, I would say, a person that have not experienced war, or mostly a person that have caused war to other people, which is coming also from the idea that in our countries people come to our land and they occupy us and they force us to leave home, and then they give us tents so we don't come back to our homes again. And that's kind of the cruelest thing you can do to any nation, of like, you know, you are okay in the tent, you can stay there while we are like doing our job in your countries. So that's kind of a statement that we have created in just saying to people that that's not acceptable. And as long as the show goes, we will definitely just keep sharing this and acknowledging that our lands are occupied, and we cannot just accept the fact that it is, and we need to change something and activate and advocate for those that have been forced to leave their homes. And the last show we have done was so beautiful. We have in the show itself, we had children joining us, and I would really encourage you, if you can see my website, to go and watch the video. It's like there's children talking more about in here, talking more about their artwork, what they have done, why they have done it. We have a Samoan group that joined us, and a Samoan group, and an Afghan girl that joined the show, and we're part of it. The show is like 1 hour, so we kind of created a space where they can share it in their own language, dance their own dance. And again, like, art is a language of so many things that we normally don't really think about it this way, but the movement, the poems, the look, the vocals that have even no words are all languages that we need to kind of just listen sometimes and absorb without really questioning it, and just like let it go through us. So that's kind of, there's more of information about how we do it. People sit in the tent very tight. They kind of like sit so close to each other as if they were in a refugee a boat that is taking and leaving their homes, and it's kind of just not very comfortable sitting, but it's definitely giving people, and as you can see, people like keep moving because it's really not comfortable sitting very closely in that space. But we kind of try to give the experience of those people in the way we can. So that's one of the shows I really want to do, and that I wanted to share with you and tell you how important, and highlight the importance of the art and culture and the language of ours, that the best way we can explain ourselves. And I didn't hear your whole talk before, but I really agree with you. Like, you are the owner of your story, you're owner of the culture, you're the owner of like the way to express it, and no one have the right to really take that ownership and right from you. And same with me, I always say, people say, why don't you translate? I said, you know what, there's enough translation out there. If you don't really feel me with the way I sing, and I only sing in Arabic ever, um that's like, I cannot really help it. That's the way I find myself best at, and best at explaining myself and my feelings. So that's one of the shows, and I would love if you also go there and like check out in the website. There's interviews with the artist and some people's opinion, and there's other things that, you know, if you want to know more and ask me, of course you can send more things. And the other thing I wanted to share with you, which is also highlighting the language, is an artwork I have done with a friend of mine, Kalina Sansbury. She's a First Nation artist from Adelaide, and the work is called Lullabies Under the Stars. And because I come from an occupied land, and I came to kind of another one, and back home we are forced to speak Hebrew as first language because everything is in Hebrew, and in here everything is in English. And when I got my 3-year-old, that Marion and Leslie have met before, and some of the ladies there, I looked a lot for First Nation session, like to know more about the local language, what kind of songs I can sing for my daughter. And I literally couldn't go, and like the only other things that were available were from, like, you know, people that are not First Nation running First Nation classes and First Nation storytelling and First Nation this and First Nation that. And that was like just too much for me. Like I said, I want to hear it from those that own it. Again, it's like there's ownership of the stories, there's ownership of the culture and the language that you cannot just take. And no matter how much you try, there's an energy that comes from those that live these experiences that cannot be explained in any other way. So what I did is, like, I wanted to also honor the children that speak other languages at home, to honor themselves and honor their language at home that they don't really hear outside. So either it's Malaysian or Mandarin or Indian, whatever the language was, they don't hear it often outside. And in this show, I start the show with Kalina between Arabic and English and First Nation words and songs, but then the mothers are the ones that are the heroes. They are the ones that sing the songs, and the child get to, for the first time maybe, see that their mom outside of the house is the one that is leading the show, is the one that is in charge, is the one that is kind of like, how important is my mom's language? It's not only at home, it's also heard and sang outside of it. And that really make it even easier for those that really respect and try so hard, like myself, to keep my daughter speaking this language, and to insist that this is the first language, this is our language. English comes later on, and any other languages, but if we don't insist on that, it's going to be lost. As many of my First Nation friends wish they could speak the language, and it's not their fault that they can't, because it wasn't possible. Same with like Maori friends, they said we were not even allowed to speak our language. So that's hard, that's heartbreaking, and that's like giving us just more hope to kind of speak more of this language. I learned so many like small short songs that I have learned with Kalina. Same when I worked with on Book J, the other show I previously shared with you. With Suri, have taught me lots of kind of small songs that it was amazing to hear and listen to and learn, and so touching. My daughter keep asking me to sing for her, even if I don't master it and it's not again my language, but I try a little bit to bring that into life and um, into her word, and just to keep reminding her this is not our land, this is someone else's land. We all call it home, but it's a land of the First Nation people who where we live in their country, and we need to kind of respect and try to learn as much as possible how to greet, how to talk, how to love in the language of the people that own this land. And because of this, and because of both projects, I felt there's something that I would like to teach children. There's something that I would like to um, support people that try and advocate for children, um, to know more about the human rights issues and the displacement issues. I thought about Amal, which is the character you can see here. Amal, for those who saw Everima, know that kind of like she has the big eyes and curly hair, and she has this kind of passion and love like Rima does for us and for helping people. And Amal is a curious girl that we would like to go in a journey and find the best way to kind of help others and know what they carried in their own bookcases, what happened to them when they had to leave their homes, how can we help them. She goes around and talk to the neighbor next door and help others to carry their own, greeting them on the shore when they arrive, and like reveals lots of stories that she hears from the grandparents that lived in Australia for 70 years or 20 years or 40 years, what brought them to Australia, and what made, sorry, and what made it for them, um, what was the reason for them to leave their homes, if they actually chose to, or it just happened to be kind of like the place they ended up, like lots of many Syrians that apply for a visa and they don't really know where would they end up being. So that's kind of the story behind Amal. We like since then I have run this fundraising that people have supported and like they have shared around, and there's of course like other friends that supported in a different way other than like donating here. They kind of like transferred money and so on. So we have so far like 2,000 and a half funding that people have supported us with, and we are waiting now while we are working this. Explosion in Beirut happened, so I paused my own kind of fundraising and I was working on some support for Lebanon. But hopefully, once this is over, I will go back again and support more and like kind of raise more awareness and encourage more people to support this project. Hopefully, every child in every library and every school have Amal's journey in there and kind of educate the children in the schools about this important issue and how we can be part of the education and the advocacy for people and human rights in Australia through art, language, and performance. So I think that's my time. I don't want to speak any longer because I would like to leave you with questions, but um, that's kind of my story with my projects and my passion.
That was absolutely inspiring, Assel.
Thank you.
Assel, your friend, Marion Kay, is going to come forward now. And Marion has a few questions in mind. And if we receive any text questions, we'll certainly ask. And I'm just going to hand over to Marion Kay, and you two might like to say hello.
Yes, always.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you, sister?
Alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah.
So tonight is about language, culture and resilience. And of course I've spoken an Islamic greeting in Arabic. And in the Muslim culture, and we often greet our female counterparts as sisters. So alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for sharing your passion and all your projects that you are involved in. I am usually astounded at Assel's energy in being able to always get up and be able to go and do a new project and have ideas for different things. So you've spoken a lot about the power of language and the power of culture in what you've already been doing with your art projects and your singing and everything else, and the importance that that is to you personally, and how you see it as being important for your daughter, bringing her up as well in a new land. So in order to flow into how that has an effect or an impact on resilience, perhaps would you be able to talk a little bit about how language and culture and your experience have perhaps increased or helped you to be resilient yourself, and also how, as I know you're so passionate about teaching Rima to speak Arabic and to make sure she has those understandings of where you come from, how you see that as helping her to be resilient as well going forward.
Yeah, well, living in Palestine and whatever other people try to or decide to call it, it was very, very hard to kind of just not be you, because like I'm wearing my hijab, so like my language is also just my body, like without even opening my mouth, people see and can tell who I am by, as you keep saying, my energy. I sometimes don't talk to people and it's like, oh my God, that's too much, like that's a lot of things. But I think there's something about, like, I cannot really separate language and activism, because again, like, I think you will know, Marian, as well, wearing hijab in a Western country, even if you look like those people, but you still don't, because there's a statement in your walking, in your being, in you even saying Assalamu alaikum. For people that don't know it, there's a huge responsibility on your shoulders that you're carrying just by being you in general. And like, just being me within this life and living in a place that don't necessarily accept the language I speak, the way I talk it, and they're actually insisting of us tilling this language was very hard. I grew up speaking more Hebrew than I spoke Arabic, again because of the way I was raised, and not because my parents didn't like me speaking Arabic, but because I just found myself speaking 3 words of Hebrew and then another word of Arabic, just because things happened and I spoke much more Hebrew outside the house. So, and I also found myself speaking more the accent more than the native speakers, because I just was so good at language. You remember me when I came to Australia and how I struggled to put 2 sentences together in English. But now, like, when I realized that I was speaking more Hebrew, that just like clicked in my mind and said like, no, 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 I just cannot do that. There's something about me that is disappearing, and language is really an identity that you have to fight for. And that's one of the reasons, linking to the second question, that I try so hard to teach Rima Arabic, because I don't want her just to be an Australian as people want her to be. There's something in her speaking the Arabic, in her language, in her greeting, in her salam alaikum, in her every day in her character that will change once she is, speaking her own and fighting, not really fighting the fight, but kind of insisting to be herself as a bundle of joy and love that she is, without really just being one another person that is following the rest, if that makes sense. That's just, I find it, as you know me, I find it hard to accept her just following the head just because everybody is speaking that, or people neglecting the language at home, so why would I speak it? I think if not me, the person that we know both, I mean, is making sure I don't forget that. We are fighting together, not fighting, like trying so hard together to keep this tradition and love and identity within our family and our daughter for sure.
And in relation to resilience, you feel that's going to make her stronger and, proud and be able to succeed in life, so to speak?
Well, I think first, I heard a lot about how important, knowing more languages and how more clever that will make you. So Rima understands Arabic and English and a little bit of Hebrew, just because I also speak it. I don't want to forget it. I haven't spoken it for 7 years. So I try to speak to her and she knows. And even when I try to speak Hebrew with my parents, so she doesn't understand, she would say to me, because she knows few songs, she was like, is it the same language like head, shoulders, knees and toes that is in Hebrew? So she knows it, and she's like, that definitely keep her clever. She switches immediately when she speaks to you, that she switch between English and Arabic, it's quicker than we switch the language on the computer. So and that's amazing. I speak to her, for those who don't know, there is the language that's spoken language in Arabic, and there's the very classic, which is a huge difference. They don't really sound like each other in actual language. That's the Quran's language is different to the spoken slang language, not like English and Hebrew. It's totally different. So she understands both, which make her speaking 3 languages already. So I really hope that, I think there's what I'm trying to kind of phrase Rima on, or what naturally she becomes. She watches me doing all this work, and she watches me and hears me speaking all these languages. I'm not really trying to do anything but to keep the Arabic. Everything else, I think she'd grow to be, because she's surrounded by me and people like you, Marianne, that are doing amazing things in their own way. And I don't know one friend of mine that is not like that. So I really hope that she will grow to be the woman she is, with the way she decides to be, and keep the love to the humanity and God in her heart for sure.
Inshallah, alhamdulillah.
So,
Any other questions that we have? No, I think that's all. Okay. Thanks so much, Assel. I look forward to seeing you in Melbourne next time, when we can fly. Okay,
thank you,
assalamualaikum.
Marianne.
Thank you, Marion. What a fabulous connection we've made tonight through technology. Assel, I believe that you've got some supper to offer us here over in Bunbury. So we're leaping across the internet hyperspace with some Lebanese date cookies. Assel has made you some, but miraculously we have some here tonight. Live streamers, if you ever do pass by, we will try to get you a date cookie wherever you are. And live streamers, what we're passing out at the moment are genuine Lebanese cookies made specially for us tonight. And it was Assel who introduced us to that. And at our symposium 2 years ago, we were able to do exactly the same offering. So we're now going to take a 15-minute break. Live streamers, we still have 2 other amazing presentations, so please take a break yourselves. And thank you so much, Assel. It has been a delight to hear your project. And what we're looking forward to, Assel, is the time you launch your book over in Bunbury and also at the Capel Library. Thank you so much. Good night. And just so that everybody does know that Assel's staying with us for a few minutes later on, and she's going to do another presentation. Hello to our live audience and our live streamers. Great to know that you're back with us. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to our stage area, Sara Storm.
Thank you.
Sara is going to continue our theme, and it once again will be about resilience, her own interpretation, and I'm going to leave it to her to explain along the way her point of view on self-belief and inner strength, and the power of song is going to come through. I'm absolutely sure of that. So over to you.
Thank you. Hello. What an awesome night it's been, just hearing about just things I didn't really know about. I was just talking then in the bathroom, as you do as a woman, about setting up hearing about some of the future plans to learn some Noongar. I hope that I said that right. And I'm pretty keen for that. So I don't know about you, but tonight's been good for me. Anyway, this is a song I wrote. Funnily enough, didn't know I was speaking beforehand. But I wrote this, I was running an art program at one of the hotels in Bustleton, and I was so planned this whole thing out. It was actually an empty building because they were rebuilding the other part of the hotel, and so it was kind of like this, like a real hollowed out, awesome acoustic sort of vibe. I had my guitar, but no students showed up. And I was so prepared, but it was all good because I had my guitar and it was a really good vibe. And so anyway, I wrote this song, which is called Fragments. And it's sometimes when I write songs, it takes me a really long time. And other times it takes me 5 minutes. So this is a 5-minute banger called Fragments. All I am is tiny fragments broken down. We love the hurricane. We build a home in people just to know that we can live like that. I build a home inside you, never knowing if I'll make it out. Are we really gonna make it out? Lay awake and I am filled with doubt. Are we really gonna make it out? I can't hear anything but myself. Oh. If I could, oh, I'd just pull me out. But sometimes the light swallows my dark. We stand alone in these crowds just to know that we can live like that. And if you all just look up, you'd see the sun shines again. Are we really gonna make it out? Lay awake and I am filled with doubt. Are we really gonna make it out? I can't hear anything but myself. All we are is tiny fragments broken down. We love the hurricane. We love the hurricane. Thank you. Thank you. talking at all. Hello. Tell you what I like about that song is like, the truth is we are actually all fragments. Like we are all fragments, which we're kind of all the same. And that's kind of what tonight's been about for me. Like I might actually regret choosing this because my hand's going to be like... But, you know, that's what I've learned tonight, hearing it from different cultures, having Assel as well, all the way from Melbourne, is that we are actually all made of the same stuff. Stardust. No, but seriously, I am speaking on resilience tonight. I spent a long time not being resilient in my life to get here. I actually worked for a company called Buzz Nurture Works. I was so lucky to get a job straight out of school pretty much, doing performing arts, travelling around to cool places like Pingelly and other small community areas, teaching resilience, emotional intelligence, bully proofing, strength-based practices, friendship skills, heaps of cool stuff that honestly I feel like I didn't get as a child in the school system. A lot of us didn't, we probably missed that. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit today, tonight. And I'm going to talk about, like, I'm just going to tell you things that I've found along the way. They're not all my words, they're just things I've learned. I won't be able to tell you exactly where I got them from, but just in my 32 years, I'm so inspired by everyone I meet. So I might meet someone, have a great conversation, take that wisdom in, relay it, and that's what we're all doing. That's the power of language. So I am regretting holding this microphone. I might do this, see how I feel being still. It's very unusual for me to be a still human. Okay, so I actually regret that. Do you love that though? How is that? That's actually art. Like you paint something, you're like, nope, wipe it away. Okay, so here we go. So I've chosen to call this Choose the Stage because resilience is literally getting up one more time than you fall, right? And I just feel like that's just life in general. So I'm going to touch on a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to skip to the next slide because you'll find out why I chose to call it that. Basically, everything about life, I believe, is actions, choices, and thoughts, because that's all we can control. So, here we go. First of all, art and life are subjective. So, part of being resilient is knowing someone's opinion really is their opinion. It doesn't need to sit in you as a truth. It doesn't need to be yours. You don't need to hold it. You can look at it, observe it, hear it out, and then choose to do what you want with it. So that's why I've got that up there. You can see that it's the difference between objective and subjective is the fact that, you know, someone having an opinion about you is just based on their coloured opinion. It's not truth. I'm going to skip that. So it's non-factual, basically. And I know personally, being an artist, I don't know if you read my bio, it's weird to call yourself an artist too. Like, I'm a musician. I do loads of different expressions, which is what I would call art, is just an expression of me. So I photograph, I sing, play guitar, bang some keys on the piano, throw paint at canvases, teach things, make leaf mandalas. I mean, whatever I feel like doing. Draw in the sand, write love hearts with my dog's name in it. That's art. And you can't tell me otherwise. All right. I can't speak of art without fear because, you know, there's a sense of fear in any expression because there's a vulnerability, and that's honestly what makes it so courageous. So I can't speak of it without worthiness because we question that when we express ourselves. I can't speak about it without resilience because you can't express yourself and be vulnerable without the chance of falling and then the opportunity to get back up. So above all, you need courage. The courage to accept that actually not everyone's going to like what you do. You might hate my leaf mandala. You might have hated my song. And that's cool. Like, we're not all going to like the same thing. And that's actually kind of beautiful because you can appeal to the people that do like it. And you can feel that and then it just expands. So anyway, I have an example of a time that someone, well, you know, you get given opportunities. I've written down here New Year's Music Festival because there was actually a time that I had to say no to an experience because it didn't sit and align with me. And I think part of being an artist, or part of actually anything in life, probably the biggest thing that we have to offer is our no's. What we choose to say no to is probably the most powerful thing that you can do. So I got offered to do this music festival, super exciting. I felt really good about it. And then as time went on, the more we organised it, it was kind of like grinding me. I was getting, told, we want you to sing these songs and like this and do it like this and like this. And I was like, man, I'm starting to get anxious about this. It's not feeling joyful, and it needs to. Like, it might not always. You always do things that don't, that's part of life. You can't always enjoy everything. Like, I can tell you I was nervous before I did this today, but I know afterwards when I have a wine, I'll be super stoked. Anyway, so there was literally a point at this great opportunity where I had to go, am I actually willing to do this? Like, what am I getting out of this? Is it worth it, And I chose not to do it, and it was one of my first no's, and I was super nervous. But I was so proud afterwards because I was like, I just felt that, like, when you're doing something or you're given an opportunity, you can feel when it's not right. Like maybe a relationship you're entering and you're like, ooh, red flags, but it's not actually visible. It's just in your body. It's like, no. And you're like, whatever, you're being ridiculous. So you keep trying, and then it just gets more obvious, and you end up vomiting and you're sick and depressed for 3 weeks. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously though, I mean, if you miss the signs, that's what happens. I can tell you that for sure. All right, so getting to that, there is courage in crumbling, and there is courage in choosing you, and there is so much courage in the comeback. And honestly, without the fall, you wouldn't build that strength. Do you know what I mean? So every morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most. So you might be having like a terrible time, but you don't know what's in store for you the next day. And that's the best thing for me about resilience, is like literally, for instance, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I was married for a really long time. I say 13 years, he says 12. We still argue about that. But like I never pictured my life being a single mother. Like I had a prejudgment about that. I never pictured my life without someone that I was with since I was 16 to 29. You don't picture these things, and then you just can't even see. You can't see past the obstacle. You cannot see that the thing that feels the hardest is actually going to be the best for you to grow. And we'll talk about that more later. So, when is the last time that you gave yourself space to actually crumble and crack open? Because I actually think that's how the light gets in, and that's why I chose that Hemingway quote. We are all broken, and that's how the light gets in. But I think sometimes as women, we're so busy trying to meet all of these goals we have or roles that we have that we don't actually allow ourselves to fall apart. So we keep going, and we get sick, and we're stressed, and we aren't happy, Like, I think sometimes even when people aren't happy, they just keep pushing themselves through it. So, part of actually allowing yourself that opportunity to fall apart is actually allowing yourself to be authentic. Because that, like we said before, you fall, you get back up. That's resilience. So, you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and you hustle for your worthiness. I love that. Because it's like, what are we trying to achieve by being this perfect image of like, I'm holding my shit together. Oh, sorry, everyone that might not like that word. I was like, I will not swear. Anyway. No, but like, that's what we are. We're like walking around like these zombies. Like, I've got my stuff together. Do you? Don't tell me how you really are. Please pretend that everything is fine so that I feel like I should also be fine. But like, when have you actually said to someone how you feel when they say, how are you? We all go, good, right? Who, have you ever done this? I've literally said to the supermarket person, you know what, I'm having a really bad day. Like, this happened, and like, actually, I don't know if I can talk about it. I'm probably going to cry to you. Anyway, how was your day? And it's like, whoa, this 14-year-old kid's looking at me like, I just had an exam. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, dude. But, we actually, why don't we answer that truthfully? Because we're afraid to show up. We're afraid to be authentic. Because being authentic is vulnerable, and that's uncomfortable. And to be vulnerable, you have to be brave. And this is my next favourite thing. By the way, you'll notice I love Brené Brown. That is one of my big influences, and Mark Groves at the moment. So what does authenticity mean? Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. So someone said to me earlier, actually it was you, "You're so brave." And I said, "No, babe, I'm so scared." But you can't actually be brave unless you're scared, because it's the opportunity, to actually show up. So creating boundaries means saying no and valuing your self-worth more than the approval of someone else. So for me, it was actually saying no to that concert because I valued myself showing up authentically more than that person being impressed that I was doing what they wanted. And that was hard. It was so hard. It's not easy. So who are you supposed to be? Bouncing back to that quote, it's letting go of who we think we're supposed to be. So who do you think you're supposed to be? A mother? A wife? Maybe a wife? Maybe a sister? Daughter, businesswoman, friend, but like a really good friend, like the best friend, the one that's there like all the time, like 4 a.m. on the phone while your friend's crying. But please do all of that at 100% because, you have 500% to give, right? No. What's left for you? You can't give from an empty cup. And trust me, I have tried and I have been on the floor crying like a catatonic animal. You just can't give from it. And as a giver, and an empath that I am, and I'm sure loads of other people are, especially women. I think, not to generalise that, because I'm sure there are lots of men, but women that are mothers and carers and caretakers, we keep giving when we have nothing to give. But it's like the bank's not going to lend you money if they don't have money. Do you know what I mean? So, back to that, you need to think about what fills your cup and do a bit more of that. So have a bath. I had a bath today. It was so great. Nearly burnt myself. It was all hot and I was like, eh. Anyway, so who are you without those things that you think you're supposed to be? Who are you without being a mother? Do you make sure you still are something else? Because I know for me, as soon as I became a mother, I felt like I wasn't allowed to be anything else. Am I allowed to be me? Am I allowed to be Sarah the artist? Am I allowed to? What really sets your soul on fire and what fills your cup? Because you're allowed to have those things separate from everyone else. And I encourage you today to go home and think about, or even now while you're sitting here, what actually makes me feel good that isn't about anyone else? Because that's all you will have, really, and that's who's on your stage. You're the only one on your stage. You're the only one that can do that. You can't rely on other people to fill your cup. Sure, it feels good to have a hug, have a friend listen to you, whatever fills your cup in that way, but you need to have something to give, because otherwise you're giving nothing, to be honest. This is exciting because this is the part where you find out who you are. It's the inquiry. Get curious about you. Honestly, think about, hands up if you have a child. Yeah, cool. So, right, here we go. Nurturing our child, right? They're 5, my son's 5. And he's like, "Oh, I really want to play soccer." And we're like, "Cool, I'm going to do all of this stuff. You're going to get boots, socks, shin pads. You're going to join the soccer team. We're going to go to practice." Do we do that with ourselves? Do you think, "Man, I love singing. I'm going to go invest in a whole term of singing lessons, buy myself a great microphone. I like painting. I'm going to..." No, because your husband will be like, "Why are you spending $1,000 on a microphone?" But, that's what I mean. Why are we not investing in our own curiosities about the things we're passionate about? Because you're worth that. You're worth that as well. And actually, I think that it would be the most beautiful thing you could show your child is you investing in you and showing that they get to see you having a joy and an expression. I think that's awesome. So imagine that you are the greatest discovery that you will ever find, because you are. And when you find it, then you can actually give from that place and it's more authentic. And people get excited. This is I wasn't planning to say this, but I go to the beach and wear bikinis. And I know that sounds really weird to really say about this, but I didn't realize until I started getting bulk messages from people on social media, "Wow, I didn't know that curvy girls could wear bikinis. Thank you for showing me. I'm going to wear one on my honeymoon." And I'm gobsmacked. I'm wow, just by being me, I've created a new path for someone else to know that it's okay to do the same. And you don't even know how you're doing that. We can't know the ripples of what we do and how that impacts. So yeah, just if you be yourself, you might find there might be something you do that inspires someone else to really truly be themselves too. So let's talk about motherhood. So as I touched on before, I've really struggled. Like, it's obviously a beautiful thing, right? Having a kid, everyone's excited, and some people can't have that. And then, you know, if you ever complain about being a parent, you feel guilty. I lived with my auntie who really struggled with conception, and it was heartbreaking. So I've seen that side of it. So I want to be grateful all the time, but sometimes it's bloody hard, to be honest with you. But when I became a mother, I struggled because I was like, this is it. This is the thing in the movies where they cry immediately and have this bond, and breastfeeding's great, like you're just the source of life. Not for me. I literally gave birth, stood up and went and showered. Like, I was like off that. That was uncomfortable. And I just didn't have that moment. I didn't have that moment where it was like, I'm crying and joyful. I was like, I'm tired and bleeding. Horrific. And, yeah, right? And then the breastfeeding thing didn't go to plan for me, and I had to deal with all this failure of like, man, that was something I wanted. I wanted the natural birth and the breastfeeding and the organic, and, you know, and I didn't get that because it was really hard for me, and I had to face, I know it sounds, I mean, some of you can probably really understand, like, that pressure of like, you must breastfeed. Like, I'd researched it. I'm an organic hippie. And like, I couldn't do it, and I had to do formula, and I felt like, I honestly think you would remember this actually. Every time I was feeding my son formula in public, I think I honestly just would tell everyone my whole story. I'd be like, oh, I'm bottle feeding because I couldn't breastfeed. And like, this poor person's just probably like casually having a coffee, and I'm like, hear my story and why I'm not a failure, please. But, you know, another thing that happens, and I have put this as a little reference there for those of you that are seeing the live stream, you can probably be like, why does it say Europe trip and music tour? And I'll tell you why. Because they were two things, well, one's coming up in 2 weeks, and the other thing is when I chose myself. So choosing yourself as a mother is actually really hard because, first of all, you have the beautiful mother's guilt, which we have all had to swallow at times, and it's gross. Secondly, it's the judgment of other mothers when you do choose yourself. Like, for instance, I went to Europe for 6 weeks when my son was 4. Yeah, people don't get that. They're like, how could you? Yeah, I'm not going to lie, I cried a lot of the time. And I FaceTimed him every night as if I was in range, and it was hard, but like, I really needed to do that. And I have an amazing ex-husband that's supportive of that. And to be fair, before I even actually chose to do it, I was so sick I actually thought I was going to die in hospital because I'd run myself so into the ground by not choosing me that I did make myself physically sick and emotionally sick. And my liver went into failure, and I actually thought I had cancer. There was some terrible things going on. I was terribly unwell. And my ex-husband had known I'd been saving to go to take my son with me. And he was like, just do it. Book the flights now. Just do it. Like, life's too short. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to say no to that. So I did. But, you know, I don't even need that excuse to choose that. And I don't want anyone here to get to that point before they choose themselves, because we don't need a reason. We don't even need to tell people, I'm doing this because I want to, and I'm still a mother and I'm still a person. And the other thing that's come up recently, which has actually really flared this up again, is I got offered to do a music tour, which is happening in a few weeks. I'm going up north, which I'm super pumped for. But again, the same thing at the school, the catching up with my awesome school mum friends, and they're like, wow, I could never leave my son, you know, or daughter. And it's like, yeah, like, it's not easy, but I'd rather just actually still have a life. I want my son, sorry, my nose is a bit runny, I'm allergic. I want my son to see me living. I want my son to like be like, yeah, my mum did this. Like, I want to be someone that he can know about. I don't want to be someone that's just living through him. That's what it's about, choosing the stage. It's choosing the stage because it's your life. He wouldn't even have a lunch if I didn't make it. He wouldn't have a roof over his head if I didn't provide it, because nothing actually would be for him from me if I wasn't me on the stage first. So you can't actually, it's the same, you can't give from an empty cup. You can't, there is no stage if I'm not on it, because it's my life. So like, you know, he chose me as a soul to come be his mother. So he's just tagging along on the ride. He can come with his headphones onto my gigs, and I'll go to his soccer games and yell on the side. And like, that's it. Like, we're a team. I'm just as important as him, if not more, because honestly, when I was sick, I couldn't do nothing for him. I couldn't get out of bed. and he had to learn how to look after himself. And I think from that moment I knew you are the most important person in your life, because you can't give anything if you're not well. I'm talking too much. Here we go. Look at that. I was on track. Who is the most important person? Let me hear you say it. Oh, come on. You are. Your children. This is a trick question. Obviously, we know it's not. But you know what? Society would have you believe that your children are more important than you. But who are they without you? They wouldn't even survive. Try get your kids to survive a week without you feeding them. Mine wouldn't. He'd probably just eat yogurt till there's nothing left. Husband also probably wouldn't survive a week without your food. No, I'm just kidding. Friends, no, we know. Who's on the stage? It's you. You are the most important person in your life. And I love this quote because it reminds me of that New Year's thing I told you about. And every day the world will drag you by the hand yelling, this is important, this is important, this is important. You need to worry about this and this and this. And each day it's up to you to pull your hand back and put it on your heart and say, no, this is what's important. Because no one will do that for you. Trust me. So, who is on your stage? Part of being resilient is having connection, cultivating connection with people, having friendships, belonging. So belonging in the community. So, you know, they say that you need to have the people you're around most, the 5 people you're around most are the people you're most like. So to surround yourself with people that you want to be like, I guess, or similar interests, whatever. So that's important. If you haven't got a group of friends, you really, really need to get out a little bit. And it's probably hard because not everyone's extroverted, but we're so lucky now because we have social media, so there's ways to connect. You can live stream. Hello. So yeah, I would recommend that. Cultivate connection, friendships, groups. You know, find some people, have them on your stage. But the most important part, like I said in the beginning, it's not the yes, come on my stage. It's the, you don't really belong on my stage because you're making me feel like a shitty person. So you're just off my stage, right? You are important enough to have your stage, your life, and you choose who's on there, which means the hardest part, and honestly, even though I know this and I've known this for a long time, getting rid of people out of your life is the hardest but most valuable thing you can do. You need to fire them, like the director you are of your life, right? Nope, this doesn't feel good. Trust your body when it says that and get rid of them, because life's too short to have someone around you that doesn't make you feel amazing. Another story. Similar thing, choosing the lens. I love little analogies like this. So I was a pretty depressed teenager. I'm sorry if I'm talking over time. Are we going okay? Really? Oh, I better be quick. Okay, really quick. So choosing the lens, the reason I say that is because when I first got into photography, I was actually really depressed. And I got a camera and there was there's something about it looking through a lens because you're deliberately looking for the good, right? You don't want to photograph a piece of poo on the ground. You're looking for things. So I'm whoa, I was near the bakery near my house and there was this little flower popping out of a crack, but it was near the dumpster. And I was oh, damn, that flower's in a really weird spot. And then anyway, I just chose a different lens and I adjusted it. And then when I took the photo, you couldn't see anything behind it, just the flower. And I love remembering that because you can choose how you view something and you can get rid of the things you don't want in it if you view it right. So it's your show, your life, your choices. I'm going to rush through this bit. It's scary to put yourself first, but being scared is an opportunity to be brave. Daring greatly is being brave and afraid every minute of at the exact same time every day. That's what I meant before. Grasping opportunities instead of fear and stepping anyway. Being afraid but stepping anyway. That's courageous. So I rang my mum up during this time. That's my mum and my son. Cute, hey? And I was oh gosh, I don't know, why have I been chosen to do this talk? I'm not worthy to be on the stage of my life. And my mum was well, you can't fail. There is no failure, only feedback. And I was damn, that's going in it. So there it is. That's just my son. When we slept in the car on that mattress with that exact blanket, and I had this in here because it says, in my experience, the things that go pear-shaped are the most memorable. You either learn or you laugh. So he loves that time. He looks back at that memory and brings it up all the time, how we slept in the car and looked at the stars. And for me, I see it as a moment that I failed as a mother because the ranger woke us up at 4 a.m. and made us leave. But you know what? I learned from that. Now we leave before 4. Facing rejection is the bravest thing you'll ever do. Stepping towards something without knowing the outcome is a hugely courageous way to live. And that's in any way. Like, you know, it's in telling someone that you love them. It's in singing a song that you wrote. It's in having an art piece about a word that means something to you. You know, like if you feel that you're afraid of rejection, do it, because that's like, you know, you're at the edge, like you're pushing yourself. If you're afraid of something, like obviously don't jump off a cliff because that'd be bad, but like if you feel that there's a way you could be rejected, that means you're close. That's an opportunity to be brave, right? This I'm going to touch on really quick because I know I'm caught for time. But I used to teach with Buzz for about 10 years, and we had one day we were talking about seeds, and actually you all have a little packet of seeds. Sorry, people at home, you don't get one. No, I'm just kidding. You can find some at Bunnings, I'm sure. They're sunflower seeds. Anyway, in the class I was teaching, we were talking about why we chose the seed for the power to change and grow. And she was like, well, there was a lot of kids there. They were 11. One girl was like, because, well, you put the seed in the ground and then the sun makes it grow. And I said, well, what else makes it grow? Like, let's go deeper than that. And this girl had been sitting there quietly, and I always wait for the quiet ones because they've been thinking, you know, they're not rushing. She puts her hand up and she goes, so a seed grows best in poo? Sorry to reference poo again, but she did. It grows best in poo. And I was like, And she goes, yeah, you put it in the poo like manure or something, and, you know, it's moist and it's dark, and also it has to be on its own because it won't grow if you put all the seeds in. It has to be on its own, in the dark, in the poo, and then you water it so it's real sticky and moist and stinky, and then the sun. So it's hot, stinky, moist, in the poo, on its own. Does that sound like a great growing environment? Because it is. That's optimum growing environment for a seed. And funnily enough, a human. Actually, this is what I was going to say about it. The seed that you guys have got to take home, I want you to remember and never forget that the hardest times in your life, when you're actually in the stinky poo, that's the greatest opportunity for you to grow and step into yourself. So I'll leave you tonight with a few questions. First of all, who will you let on your stage? Because your stage is so magnificent. It's like golden and sparkly, and only let people that don't wear high heels on it because they'll break it. No, I mean, like, genuinely, let people on your stage that will grow you. Let people on your stage that make you feel good. And which lens will you choose? Think about these things: the stage, the lens, the seed. That's what I think is important. Your worth lives in your choices. Your worth will never live in someone else's selection of you or approval of you. If it does, the universe will take it from you again and again until you realize that your self-worth doesn't live outside of you. Your self-worth does not live in someone else choosing you. It lives in you choosing you. Thank you. Oh, I haven't finished. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm technically meant to, but really quickly, the real questions then become, if I loved me, what would I do? If I were enough, what would I do? And if I was someone I cared about, what would I actually tolerate? So yeah, that's actually the end. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. What an inspiring presentation, and an absolutely amazing end to the presentations tonight. And live streamers, I hope that you're still here because we have a couple of lullabies to help you go to bed tonight. So thank you very much, Sarah. And we now are going to invite, firstly, Assel to sing you a lullaby in Arabic.
Hello again. Hope hope you guys missed me in Bunbury. I missed you, and I wish I could just be going freely outside in the streets as you can. Today I will sing to you a song that I love so much. It's a song that it can be a lullaby because I love singing it to my daughter, and it's talking about like our belief and believing in God and trusting in Him in whatever happens. And it's called "To the One Who Sees," and that's how it goes. يا من يرى يا من يرى مد البعوض جناحها في ظلمة الليل البهيم الأليل ويرى مناط عروقها في نحرها والمخ من تلك العظام النحل يا من يرى مد البعوض جناحها في ظلمة الليل البهيم الأليل ويرى مناط عروقها في نحرها والمخ من تلك العظام النحل ويرى خرير الدم في أوداجها متنقلا من مفصل في مفصل ويرى وصول غد الجنين ببطنها في ظلمة الأحشاء بغير تمهل ويرى مكان الوطء من أقدامها في سيرها وحثيثها المستعجل يا من يرى. Thank you.
Assel, can you hear our applause? Did you hear that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Assel. Assel will stay watching us a little bit more, won't you? Okay.
Yes, yes, I would love to hear the other lullabies.
Great. We now invite another mother and daughter team to the stage. Introducing Phyllis, Charmaine's mum. Charmaine is going to tell you a little bit about the Noongar Lullaby project that she is the director of. If she has time, it's really up to you. We'd love to hear. There are many times that I've had the absolute honour of listening to Phyllis and Charmaine, and one of the things that I've been captivated with is Phyllis's beautiful playing of the harmonica. So now I'm handing over to you both, and we're going to hear 2 lullabies, and then once we've heard those, we're going to thank everybody, and then we will send you off to bed.
I'd just like to quickly tell you where this lullaby came from. It came from my dear old mother. We used to live out the bush. There was 11 of us, quite a few to put to sleep. So she used to sing to us when our dad used to go away working for a week or so, shearing or whatever he was doing. And we lived out of town in the camps out the bush where we didn't have really lights or anything, so she just kept us happy the best way she could. The song is called Ruby's Song. Her name was Ruby. Mawat no kangundi, you are Jenny. My long calling. You are cool.
sleep, my baby, and close your weary eye. Daddy's gone and left her, but he'll be coming home soon. Close your eyes, my babies, and in the morning light, he will be returning, and things will be alright. Now hope you like it. Bit emotional, that one. Oh, how deadly was that? This makes me so proud. My mum, just listening to the previous speaker talking about the stage and owning the stage, and my mum has always been a singer and taught us songs when we were children, and we used to go to a lot of gospel concerts and Christian meetings, and mum was up on stage all the time singing, so I think she always owned the stage. Now she's taught me, and now she's teaching our grandchildren, and so I'm really proud of her. And just to answer, talk about what Leslie was asking, the Lullaby project began in 2018 for me, as I was referred by another colleague and another musician that started the project a few years earlier. And because we were starting a language project or language centre down in Bunbury, the lady from Community Arts came down and said, would you like to help community create lullabies in Noongar language? And I said, can I play the guitar? She goes, yeah. And I said, do we get to record stuff? She goes, yeah. And I said, well, the difference was, previously the lullabies are actually collaborated by community and grassroots community, people that never sang in their life before. But what the difference was, I said, I'm going to shake it up a bit. And I said, instead of me singing and recording the songs for the community, I asked the community, you're going to sing yourself. And they're like, what? We're going to sing in the studio and we're going to learn how to sing? And some just said, I never sang in my life. But what was fantastic, we had our first ever attempt. We created 19 lullabies in Noongar language in one weekend with our community. And we have various different ages, children, all the way up to grandmothers and great-grandmothers, and we had some couple of dads with us, and so that was awesome. And we had Deadly Sound Guy, so our producer, and we had a fantastic team, and my mum was part of the first project, so that was the little song, and that's actually on that album, so check it out. But yeah, try and stay awake though. And this is another little one. This is from the Mandurah Lullabies project. So I did such a good job. They said, oh, you're going to go to Mandurah now. And I said, oh, a bit out of my depths, different community, you know, different clan. So, but, you know, in honours and respects to the Pinjarra clan that way in Mandurah, so I had to ask permission if I could speak language and share language on country with them. And because the guy that I knew, he was also a language teacher and also a musician, George Wally. So he says, you're right, sis, I know how you work, and I'll just check in on time to time. So that was really good. And so we created another album. And again, the same process. People got to sing. And there was one particular lady that really inspired me. It had such a huge story to tell about resilience, about grief, about loss. And this lady spoke many languages, and the one she didn't speak was her own Noongar language. And it was just so inspiring. And I want to dedicate this one to her because she said, I don't know how to write a song. I said, okay then. Well, I'm going to create this song, but it's going to be named after you. And it's called Rosie's Song. Thank you. And Marwat means my baby.
Thank you so much, Phyllis and Charmaine. I think I can feel that I'm starting to feel ready to go to bed after that. How relaxing and beautiful. It gives us great opportunity now to invite two of our representatives of partners for this event. I'd like to introduce to you the chairperson of the Southwest Women's Health and Information Centre, Karen Turner.
On behalf of Women's Health Service Centre, I just thank you for all coming along tonight and all those online as well. It's been a fantastic night and it's nice to see women being empowered for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. And also we welcome our representative from the Shire of Capel, Councillor Sara Andrews.
Hi, I'd like to just thank everyone for coming this evening as well and joining us online. The event's truly just amazing. I hope that the link can go out and lots of people can view it over the next couple of weeks and months and years to come, because I think some of the stories tonight have just been really inspiring.
Thank you. We're also acknowledging our ECU partner tonight. Marilyn Palmer, who was present last year, has sent her regards from Alice Springs. We also have some teams of people to thank this evening. The team at the Southwest Women's Health and Information Centre, the team at the Shire of Capel Community Development, Lomax team, Totally Sound team. It all came together absolutely brilliantly, and I could see all night how STAM came together. Border.